So having looked at that, I'd like to take a look at some examples of traffic management that isn't up to standard, and just briefly talk over each of the photographs about the legislation backing up why what's happening there is wrong. I'd first of all like to have a look at temporary vehicle restraint barriers and the specifications behind those and how they can be used and why it wouldn't fit the specification. I'm going to look at that one in detail and then briefly go over a couple of others over some photographs. So first of all, when you work behind permanent and temporary safety barriers, they have a containment value, they have a deflection zone referred to as either the working width or the safety zone behind that barrier. Okay? So if that safety barrier gets hit, it will move. Okay? It's designed to move in and contain the crash. And with some of these systems, actually designed to guide people back out into traffic in a nice, safe manner, where they're nice and straight, rather than bouncing off a brick wall, as it were, and maybe taking out lanes of traffic that are passing next to them. So within this clearance area, no work should be undertaken. No material should be stored in that clearance zone. No vehicle should be parked in that clearance zone. It's a defined dead area, and that's the furthest area that barrier will ever move in if it's struck by a passing vehicle that's out of control. So within Chapter 8, the exact legislation reads, the design of the layout of barriers must adhere to the manufacturer's requirements. And there's lots of different manufacturers' barriers out there. So it's the manufacturer's requirements that you must adhere to. You can't look for that guidance in Chapter 8. And this is to ensure the safety barrier acts as intended on impact. Temporary barriers also must conform to ISEN 1317, which is an Irish and European standard. Some of the requirements within there are anchorage of terminals, tensioning where required, specified minimum lengths of barrier, sometimes maximum lengths as well. Also maintaining clear working width, which is something we looked at on the previous slide there. Barrier supports or foundations and interlocking units on concrete barriers and barrier guard and other pieces of barrier of that nature are part and parcel of those systems. So just have a quick look at a couple of photos here of where barrier is not, or the layout of the site doesn't appreciate the specifications for the temporary traffic management, temporary vehicle restraint barrier. We can see here there's been some earth removal from site, and the barrier's gone down some days previous or weeks, or depending on the length of the job, it could have been there for a while. And the earth removal has been stacked up against the barrier. Now, you might look at it from the workforce's point of view and say, well, where the vehicles hit the barrier, there's no way now they're ever going to reach the workforce. But the barriers are there and the safety zones are there as a two-way thing. They are also there for the road user. Okay? And in that state, if that's crashed into, the road user has that barrier has no containment value for the road user. So he's likely to bounce off, maybe causing further accidents on the carriageway next to where he's had his incident, rather than the barrier acting as it's intended and giving the containment level for the road user and hopefully saving him from a possible fatality there. Other things like portaloos and VMS signs placed next to it as well, not appreciating the safety zone as to some of the things that you may see commonplace around the place. So, just wanted to bring up an example of a specification sheet for temporary barrier. This one's for a particular product called VariaGuard. I chose this especially because it's viewed as one of the safest barrier products on the market. I won't go into the workings of it in too much detail, but you can see from the drawing here, the live traffic is set back from the barrier. The footprint of the barrier is actually 400 millimetres, with the safety zone from the point there into the work area. The working width that we've discussed is not described on that drawing. The working width would include the footprint of the barrier and the safety zone. So the working width is always a larger width than just the safety zone itself. So you can see down here in the circle section for the safety zone, we've got the different speeds of road in this particular piece of barrier, the different safety zone widths which have to be adhered to. A lot of the time you find these on high speed roads, on high-speed roads, dual carriageways, motorways, etc., you've got a 1.1 metre safety zone inside of that barrier. About a lot of the roads that you see. Think about a lot of the works that you see out there. They don't often have that safety zone adhered to. You see parked vehicles and the other things that we've seen on the photographs there, which obviously shouldn't be happening. So that's temporary vehicle restraint barriers, and a bit of a more detailed look at those. There's just a couple of photos I want to go over with some other areas as well to have a look at some other standards. We've got the incorrect wearing of PPE here, okay, and wearing PPE undone, as the two guys in the photo there are, is something you will see regularly on roadworks. EN 471, which is the European standard for high visibility clothing, clearly states within that document that two reflective bands must be around your torso at all times when wearing high visibility clothing. Obviously, in undoing your jacket, those two reflective bands are no longer the complete way around your torso, so they no longer the complete way around your torso. So that's below the minimum standard expected when wearing that equipment. Another photo here of some remedial works, urban works there. You can see the barriers used here have no reflective guidance on them. There's barriers next to traffic when it should be cones. There's a supermarket entrance here, traffic light junction. So just generally poor management of the traffic and the pedestrian management there, and not being up to the correct specification. Rural roads, you often see substandard layouts. This one here probably doesn't even appreciate enough width for single file traffic, let alone two-way traffic coming past there. And you can clearly see there's no stop and go control or traffic light control or anything on that particular set of work. So again, something there that's not to standard. There's lots of other things on there as well, but I'm conscious of the time. This one in particular, as far as pedestrians is concerned, is a very bad example. We're on a very sharp bend here. The footpath is completely taken out. There's a bus stop here as well. It's not covered over, so it's quite apparent the bus company have not been consulted about the works either. If you were an elderly pedestrian coming down the footpath here and you had to negotiate these into live traffic on that bend, it could certainly be a very dangerous situation. So again, a bad example there. Going back to one of the other specifications, again there's quite a few things wrong with this, but concentrating on the cones there, which have no reflective sleeve. TS4, the Department of the Environment document we listed earlier, as well as EN 13422, the European standard, clearly state that a certain percentage of the canicular section of each cone should be retro-reflective. And they need to have the correct retro-reflective sleeve on them as well. 750mm cones have a different cone sleeve to 1 metre cones, so again, they need re-sleeving correctly. Naked cones, as I like to call them, shouldn't be on the site at all. Regular maintenance is something else as well. Within Chapter 8 it states that cones, signs and traffic management equipment should be kept up to standard in a nature which gives correct direction for the motorist in all conditions, including at night when there's darkness, there's no daylight. The reflective sleeves shouldn't be dirty, so they reflect back at the motorist. Lamps should be kept clean. You can clearly see that these are dirty because the sensors in the lamps think it's actually darkness, so the lamps stay on through the daytime. Things like that, which again costs you money in the end because you've got to keep replacing the batteries a lot more often than you normally would have to. So there's knock-on effects for not maintaining your site correctly as well. So that's the kind of things that we need to audit. And what we've gone over there, you can see there's a hell of a lot there to police. When we're policing traffic management systems, we perform what's generally termed as an audit. There's various processes of auditing. At the planning stage, we can audit the outputs. Okay, so things that are produced at planning stage. People go to site, they perform site visits, they do a risk assessment. Out of that risk assessment gets born a safe method of work in the form of a method statement. Traffic management plans are then produced as well to give a pictorial representation of the traffic management that's going to be put in place. And if you need to dig further and see the core problems maybe of what's caused the problems at planning stage, you may need to inspect site inspection records, see what resource has been identified, the correct skill set and everything else. So all of this we can audit after the planning stage has been completed. And to be honest, throughout the country, nationally, the auditing and the checking of things at the planning stage is generally up to a good standard. Local authorities, the NRA and other people generally audit the outputs that people produce in a concise manner. I would be of the opinion though at construction stage we do have a lot of improvement to do. Auditing the works at construction stage, we generally use a direct observation, similar to what we've just done with the photographs there as we've gone through those examples. We've observed what's there and made a judgment. And that's usually the most concise way of auditing the works when they're in situ. But following on from that, reporting the non-conformances, rectifying those non-conformances, and then follow-up audits to ensure that what you've requested to be done has actually taken place and is now safe for the road worker and the road user, are going to be important elements of the construction stage audit. So, those are the processes for auditing. As I said, the construction stage is where really, I view, the industry needs a lot of work on. It's not up to the standard that we could expect, and you've only got to drive around and see the standard of traffic management yourselves to understand that isn't the case. So, given the processes that we've just looked at, where can we get this and what providers are there of temporary traffic management auditing? Well, first of all, there is a formal approach called road safety audit, which there was a seminar a couple of hours ago in this venue earlier on road safety audit. There are various providers nationwide of road safety audit. It's a requirement on some contracts to have a road safety audit, certainly a stage 2 road safety audit at design stage to audit the drawings and the plans and the risk assessments and method statements that have been produced and ensure they're to the standards outlined earlier. Stage 3, it says within the road safety audit guidelines, is still applicable to temporary traffic management. And from the way it reads, I would conclude that it's for post-construction stage audits. For instance, where you've altered the permanent road layout to facilitate the temporary traffic management works, thus needing to put it back to what was the permanent standard before after you've finished your works. And an audit would generally take place, but that is now up to standard. So that's where this stage 3 road safety audit would come in. But the actual construction stage, there's no formalised process within any legislation that's actually applicable at the moment. So 2 ways of doing this. In-house auditing, you can do this yourself, obviously very cost effective. You can have your guys go out there, audit your sites, make sure your quality procedures are up to standard and things like that. But you do need to ensure that your in-house skills do meet the requirements. So there's no point going out there if you don't know nothing about traffic management. Does need to be a certain skill set there. There are auditing service providers, various providers nationwide. They're historically cheaper than the full road safety audit because they're not a requirement of the contract, so they're generally cheaper. And they are very useful if traffic management itself is not your specialist area. Having a specialist come in and audit the works for you and provide you with a report can maybe give you that peace of mind as a client, as a main contractor or somebody that the works are up to standard, they're safe, and you've met your legislative requirements. There's also training in auditing traffic management. I mentioned earlier we've trained the HSA inspectors ourselves in auditing traffic management, so there is training available on auditing as well for those that would wish to undertake it.